an experience is really profound and thrilling.
I do wonder, just thinking back to what we talked about earlier about finding your voice and not worrying about the hits on TV today, just feels like things like data analytics are like screaming in your face. The internet's right there. You can have your own very quick perception on what you think is doing well. You might be tracking all the new films coming on Netflix and making some snap judgment on what that means about what they want to buy. Like, it just seems hard to get away and to just focus on crafting what you're really supposed to be working on.
Yeah, I try not to think about it. And it's great because I don't. I develop in a bubble, but then you get out there in the world and people just go like, no, we don't want to do it. So I don't try to think about that when I'm looking for stories. I really do try to find the voice first, and then what do they want to say. And if I think that could resonate with an audience, then I want to develop it and see what it looks like. And again, to invoke the words of Peter Roth, because he's a wise man, he's been doing this for 40 years, he says, as a studio, as development executives, all we can do is do our best to make the best version of the show we're trying to make, and then it's up to the audience.
And how much time do you get from the audience? Like, how does it work today in terms of how much essentially leash that you have to figure out whether or not this story is going to get told for a long time? We hear all the stories about how.
Well, it seems to go completely in a circle, because I remember HBO series like 6 Feet Under was sort of the invention of the slow burn. There's no commercial break, so you're going to stay with it for a longer period of time. And Netflix, when they really wanted to slow down the storytelling, so you would binge and get engaged. And if you talk to certain streaming service executives now, they'll tell you you've got 4 minutes. And so we're right back to the network model of testing, where I've got 4 minutes to capture the audience's attention. It's
Interesting. I want to talk just a little bit about talent. Maybe Chris, I'll start with you, since you're looking for those fresh young faces. What goes into that process of? You talked a little bit about what you're looking for, just in terms of the content, but in terms of working with new talent and what you're looking for in those people. Maybe you could shed a little bit more light on that.
Yeah, and this is assuming that they already have talent, right? And because
everybody in the room has talent.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. It just kind of brought me to A Star Is Born, and there's a scene in there. I'm not giving anything away, where he tells the Lady Gaga character just what you said. Everybody in the room has talent, right? And he was drunk when he said it, but it made sense. He says, but it's what you say and how you say is what makes it matter, right? And it's like, that's the difference. It's like, if you have talent, if all talent is equal, it's that one person who's just saying it in a different way that makes us go like, that's what I gravitate towards, okay? And so, if I'm answering your question right, it's like, how do I then take that talent and tell it in a way that I think, just kind of based on my experience in terms of telling stories over the last 20 years, I think it's going to resonate with an audience. I tell the writers, I go, look, I want you to tell the story that you want to tell, but I'm going to call bullshit on if I think your character isn't acting like a human being, right? Because you have to start there, because that's when the audience starts to go, I don't believe that. Like, why would they do that? And so it's kind of my job, I feel, is just to make sure that the humans in their story are acting like, everyone, so it's relatable, and I think that's where the magic happens.
The television, as a television writer, if you are looking to continue your career to reach a pinnacle of success where you're creating your own content, you have to be a leader. And the question is, what does that mean? And there are many, many different kinds. There are fascists, and there are Democrats, and there are lots of ways to do that. And I think it's very evident from the very early stages when we're working with writers that somebody is effectively listening. I think that's really key. How you listen, how you ask questions. And I think inevitably it comes from a wealth of experience that doesn't necessarily have to come from the writer's room. It can be anything that you're doing in life. And as we said earlier, learning from the people you don't want to emulate as well as the people you do. But that's a part of it. So how you engage in a conversation with somebody about the work you've created. Somebody's going to be asking you questions, maybe making some declarative statements, but you have the freedom to ask questions back, and shape a dialogue and show that you're truly listening and truly engaging. And I think that's really key.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, let's take it a little step further. It's then how you take the note and make it your own, and then make it even better than what the executive was asking for. I think, there's a lot of writers who just want to just knee jerk and just reject the note and say, well, they don't know what they're talking about. But when you have 5 people who are reasonably intelligent and they read something and they all feel the same way about your writing, you should listen to that. That means there's something going on there. And then take it in, don't, kind of debate it in the room right there. Ask the questions, to try to get to the root of what, the executive, what's bothering the executive, and then go make it your own. And I think that's where you start to make some real money, because now you're doing 2 things. You're making the project better, and now you're becoming a partner with this executive who may give you another job down the line. It's a really important.
Oh my God, it's such a great point, because you're creating relationships with everybody you're interfacing with, right? Whether it's the assistant on the phone, who will 2 years later be in the executive chair, how you are interacting with all these people is really critical.
Those are good. I mean, if we're talking about standing out, my takeaway from what you're saying is you don't necessarily stand out based on how outlandish your script idea is, or how loud you are, or how many times you're in someone's face. It's the whole package of who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I've met writers, in writing the Warner Brothers Writers Workshop, where we would meet the writer of the best script. They'd come in, and I'm like, I can't put this guy on the staff. It's just he should be writing screenplays or a novel, because it's just, they don't have the social skills to really survive in a meeting that's truly a collaborative experience, from the room, to the executives, to being on set. And so if you're not a great communicator, and if you're painfully shy or awkward, try it, but it's harder to be successful in this business.
Dante, earlier you talked about when you have figured out what the story is, or you have a show concept, and then as a producer, there are realities, set is available, or there's red tape in the way, or what have you. I'm just curious to know, is there it's kind of a question for both of you. Is it a different set of variables that could impact how the story ends up being told in short form content, let's say some of the stage 13 content, versus a longer program? The kinds of things, the hurdles along the way that will impact that story being told from start to finish, if we're talking about literally shorter content versus longer content, or no?
I think for me, it's budget. Budget is tied to page count, number of days you shoot, and the budgets for short form are very short. So, first you have to tell a story that has a beginning, a middle, and end. That's 15 minutes or less. And then you have to tell a story that may not have all the trappings of an American God, but you still want to give them the same illusion of world building. So that's really our, and the number of locations, right? So number of pages, number of locations, and number of characters all affect the budget in a real way. And then if it's genre, if it's a sci-fi and there's some world building, then you have to add more budget to it. So that's all the kind of stuff we look at. And what's really hard is you don't want to limit the writer in writing, the first pass. So I let them write the script. It's 160 pages long. The production executive, cusses me out, and then we have to, trim it down. But we get it to a place where the writer is able to tell their story, and then we get it to, a place where we can actually produce it.
Yeah, because there's so many opportunities to make television shows now, if you think about it as you're in a medieval village and there's a storyteller on 1,000 different corners, you would think that maybe the quality would go up, but that's all right. But the truth is that the quality doesn't necessarily go up. It maybe could get dissipated. So how do you set yourself apart in a very crowded place doesn't necessarily have to do with how much money you spend. And if I look at film, probably Pan's Labyrinth is one of the most brilliantly inventive films I've ever seen, just like stunning visual qualities, that I think was made for 4.5 million euros, I think. So money's got nothing to do with imagination, and it's imagination that connects you with the audience.
Very shortly, I want to give people a chance to ask some questions to these very smart individuals. One thing that we haven't really talked too much about is mentorship, and maybe there's something both of you could say about, we've talked a little bit about developing those relationships with the people who you're working with and some tips for making your way into the industry, but just how important the role of mentors has played. Maybe it's your own careers or in your observations of how the industry works.
That's a good question. I came to television later in life, or series TV later in life. I find that it's really challenging within the business to find people who you can be truly honest and open with, and there's very little opportunity to talk to your peers in a really frank way. We live in a business where we write about ourselves hourly, and everyone is champion success and patting each other on the back and giving each other awards. And you can feel like a failure really easily in that environment. But the truth is, if you can really find a key group of people that you can honestly share your experiences with, and I think the brilliance of writers is that if you really need a brutal, honest family of friends, and the best writers' room are just that. They're brutally honest, and I think it's really, really important to nurture that, and you'll carry that your entire career. And reveal yourself emotionally and be vulnerable with your peers about this stuff, because it's just so easy in the age of social media to talk about successes or to feel diminished by other people's successes. And if you think of these award shows that 85% of those people go home losers, it reshapes how you view what we're doing.
Yeah, mentors are, important, I think, in any business. And I think for writers, I think there's a couple of things that you can do. You can, I think Dante alluded to this, is find a writer's group. Some people that you trust their instincts, you respect their writing, and just share your material. Meet once a week or, twice a month, whatever you guys agree to, and just support each other. When one has some success, you celebrate that. And then you'll find that, if you're all great writers, you'll all kind of rise to the top. And it just struck me, I remember there was a showrunner who talked about, giving her pilot to her writers group. And I was like, oh, wow, the showrunners still have their same, core group of friends. And then in terms of mentorship, I think you can find those allies, especially in television, if you ever land on in a writer's room, an officially, a professional writer's room, where those you try to make allies with those upper level writers, and they do take the people who have talent, who have gumption, who put the effort, who work hard, and they'll help you along. They'll even when they go to run their own shows, they'll bring you along to be on their staff. I remember there was a couple of writers who worked on The 100, and when one of the co-EPs went to go make The Handmaid's Tale, he brought them over, and all of a sudden they were on this amazing show. So you just never know where you're going to land. So you look at every writer's room being an interview, and bring your best self every day. Yeah.
Okay. I hope we've answered some of your questions. If you do have questions, maybe throw up your hand now.